Yeah, so the Comstock Act is meant to be the kind of silver bullet for abortion opponents when it comes to this kind of brewing civil war when it comes to abortion pills. So the anti-abortion movement argues that it is still a federal crime today to mail or receive any item related to abortion, whether that's medical equipment that would be used in a surgical abortion or drugs that are
Or
used.
even could be used, not necessarily
Exactly. And the
suggested.
other thing that's important is it's not just folks mailing the stuff, right? So if you're thinking of doctors or drug companies, it's receiving it. So this would be a scenario where anybody, including a woman who orders abortion pills online, would be guilty of a federal felony. Yeah, so the Comstock Act was named after Anthony Comstock, who was a 19th century anti-smut crusader. So it was primarily targeted at any item that conservative Protestants like Comstock thought to be obscene. So that included plays by George Bernard Shaw, it included the Decameron, it included, the Venus de Milo, it included most medical textbooks involving nudity. It included fun things like graphic depictions of venereal disease because, it had something to do with sex. It also included items related to the prevention of conception, the procuring of abortion, or what a kind of catch-all for any other item for an indecent or immoral use. Again, because no one really knew how drugs were working at the time. If a drug was preventing pregnancy, helping you regulate your period, ending a pregnancy, no one knew. So the Comstock Act's been um, largely gone into disuse when it comes to abortion. There have not really been abortion related Comstock Act prosecutions, much to speak of since the 19 teens. But Congress never repealed language in the Comstock Act mentioning abortion. So the anti abortion movement argues that it is still a federal crime today to mail or receive any item related to abortion, whether that's medical equipment that would be used in a surgical abortion or drugs that are
Or
used.
even could be used, not necessarily
Exactly. And the
suggested.
other thing that's important is it's not just folks mailing the stuff, right? So if you're thinking of doctors or drug companies, it's receiving it. So this would be a scenario where anybody, including a woman who orders abortion pills online, would be guilty of a federal felony. So the reason this is important to the anti-abortion movement is it operates a lot like fetal personhood in the sense that abortion opponents don't believe that even Congress now, with the Trump administration and the Supreme Court, will pass a law banning abortion at fertilization, especially one with no exceptions that allows the punishment of women, which is what they say the Comstock Act is. So they're sort of trying to resurrect and reread the Comstock Act to be the abortion ban they know they can never get democratically. Historically, that's not really what the Comstock Act seemed to have been. Even back in the day, courts interpreted it to allow for some mailing of abortion related items for health reasons. So this is an interpretation of the Comstock Act that's sort of a 21st century invention.
Mhm.
But um, it's there because all it would need to work would be the sign off of the US Supreme Court and the willingness of the Trump administration to enforce it. At the moment, the Trump administration is not saying or doing anything on this, but that could change soon. So whether the Comstock Act is in fact an abortion ban is a question that's been posed to Matthew Kacsmaryk, who you all may remember as the most anti-abortion judge in America. He's a federal judge in the district court in Amarillo, Texas. There's a case that's been filed before him by the attorneys general of Idaho, Missouri, and Kansas, and was recently joined by the attorneys general of Kansas and Florida, that relies on the Comstock Act to say that mailing mifepristone or telehealth access to mifepristone, a drug used in the vast majority of abortions in the United States, violates federal law. So whether the Trump administration wants to deal with this or not, the federal courts may force his hand this year.
Hi, I'm Pat Morrison, one of the hosts of America at a Crossroads. If you like this video, don't just watch. Head over to our website where you can subscribe for early access to new programs, see our upcoming schedules, and connect directly with our guests in our weekly live streams. Thank you for watching. And this is, as you say, particularly relevant now, far more than 150 years ago, because the vast majority of abortions are done by medication abortions, which for many people are obtained online through telehealth. And there was a case in, I think was it Texas, that went after a New York physician because she
Mhm.
had prescribed for a woman in Texas through telehealth an abortion pill. And Texas wanted her arrested, wanted to fine her $100,000, and New York said, no, you shall not pass. But this is the new reality with telehealth, telemedicine, and these laws that are arguably state laws, but that try to reach across state lines.
Yeah, so the Comstock Act is meant to be the kind of silver bullet for abortion opponents when it comes to this kind of brewing civil war when it comes to abortion pills. So we're starting to see um, individuals filing lawsuits against doctors in blue states. So there's now a lawsuit that's been filed against a doctor in California. There's a lawsuit that's been filed by the state of Texas against a doctor in New York. Louisiana is trying to criminally prosecute that same New York doctor. But the problem for red states in that scenario is that it's not clear which state's laws apply. It's not clear when the blue state has to honor a judgment from the red state. So, and even if a red state wins or an individual conservative plaintiff wins, that doesn't mean they'll win the next case. So, as far as conservative states are concerned, that means abortion pills are kind of a game of whack-a-mole where they have to kind of constantly beat down efforts to get these pills and make them accessible to people in their states. There's even a network of doctors, so-called shield doctors, who are deliberately organizing as a form of civil disobedience to mail these pills into states where they're criminal. But the Comstock Act would sort of solve the problem because if the Supreme Court is asked, do you honor the law of New York, or do you honor the law of Texas? That's a really tricky question in many cases legally. If the question is it the federal law or New York law? That's easy most of the time. The federal law will preempt the state law. So that's why there's so much interest in the Comstock Act. It's a way of getting conservative states out from what will otherwise be a giant mess where the federal courts will have
Yeah.
to weigh in on a lot of complicated questions about conflicts of law and the full faith and credit clause. And it will make the kind of pre-Roe era look like a picture of simplicity and ease, I think, for federal judges.
See on the screen our upcoming programs and a variety of topics and timely ones as well. We hope you will join us for those topics as well and support in any way you can what it is that we do here, the mission of JUDJ's programs. Thank you very much. I'm Pat Morrison. Appreciate you watching and listening this evening.